A very good evening to our viewers. Thank you for joining us tonight on the evening review. My name is Toivan Jabela. Tonight on the platform, we are joined by Zoe Titus. She is Executive Director at the Namibia Media Foundation, and she's here to engage us on the latest rankings of press freedom. Namibia has slipped to number 2, being dislodged by South Africa this time around. And Zoe is here to help us interpret her understanding of that and the general state of press freedom in Namibia. Thank you very much, Zoe, for taking time out of your very busy schedule. Your initial thoughts, please, to Namibia becoming second to South Africa in the latest press rankings.
Toivo, thank you for having me, and good evening also to your viewers. In response to your question, I'm not at all surprised, Toivo, that we've been surpassed by South Africa. And there are, I can go into quite a bit of detail, at least as to why I think that is the case. For Namibia itself, for us, there's been a very, very slight improvement in our global ranking, but yes, we remain at number 2 in Africa. So where should I start? Would it be best to start with South Africa and my views on South Africa, or would you want me to unpack what I think about our particular situation?
Yeah, because our paradox, of course, is exactly that globally we've actually gained, but does it mean South Africa just did much better despite our own improvement, or did we decline in some facets to the extent that we slipped to number 2?
Well, before I go into detail, I must tell you, Toivo, that I feel a bit ambivalent about the rankings. I mean, it's very important globally, and on an annual basis, everyone waits with bated breath for the RSF rankings. I'm rather ambivalent about it for several reasons. Firstly, because I feel that our contexts are so different, and it becomes impossible to compare apples to pears, for example. But we can go into a lot more detail about this later. I think the reason, firstly, for South Africa's improvement and why it has shot up so dramatically is because, and I witnessed this specifically in 2023-24, that South society and even academia was incredibly active. For those in the media who have followed development, they would have noted that South Africa and the came as a collective challenge big tech. That was a huge development. The South Africa's Competition Commission reviewed how local media is being impacted by the actions of big tech, and how it's impacted its viability in terms of the ad that big tech really taking from local media. And in addition to that, aside from the ad revenue that it just gobbles up, and also takes as an aggregator that news on their platforms at no cost. So that is a process that had been ongoing in South Africa actually for quite some time. And I recall it was last year that it is an official was reached by the South African media and Google, what they call the Digital Transformation Fund, which is it's a partnership between the Association of Independent Publishers And the fund, I mean, according to calculations, would inject about 6 point something million. It's just over, let's say, 100 million, maybe 115, 20 million into the local media sector over a 3-year period. Now, considering the actual impact and the losses to the media, let's say 150 million in the bucket. But it took a lot of lobbying and a lot of strategic partnerships by the media itself through the South African National Editors Forum and the to get to that point. And I think that was a major trajectory in terms of media and civil society action in South Africa, which without a doubt would, support South Africa's decline in rankings. And in addition to that, there's so much happening in the media sector. I mean, there's SANEF, again, the South African National Editors Forum, introduced a community media digitization drive, where it's assisting print and broadcast community media organizations to map out kind of digital strategies and to develop sustainable websites, workflows, etc. So the media is actually working together, and that's amazing in a country that is historically fragmented. The media's come together, and we certainly can learn some important lessons from that. I mean, that's just how I would see the South African situation. Aside that, there's been so much input in terms of law reforms in South Africa. I do understand, I mean, I believe that they are wanting to review the Promotion of Access to Information Act, PAIA, because they believe that it's not fit for purpose in the digital age. I mean, if I recall correctly, PAIA was passed as far back as 2002, and they feel that it needs an update. So a lot of work happening in the media by practitioners and by civil society. Why we are staying at number 2? I think we can I think that we can complement largely civil society for that, because it's civil society in Namibia that has been active, especially on the access to information front. And I also would congratulate India for continuing reporting on our access to information and its impending popularization, because it is of incredible public interest. But in our minds, what has, I mean, probably kept us at number 2 are the concerns that have been repeated time and time again about political interference and economic decline of the media in Namibia. So these are factors I think that we could say would impact our rankings.
Yeah, so thank you, Zoe, for that. You are glitching a little bit, but I hope we can still be able to have this conversation until its logical conclusion. But you seem to suggest that our slip to number 2 is not maybe due strictly to the deterioration of our own environment necessarily, but that South Africa, with all those developments that you enlisted, just did better in terms of things that they can do to improve things, meaning they simply just did better. Is that sort of your interpretation?
And that's a very interesting point that you make, because when you compare in terms of the rankings, you are being compared to X country, to developments in X country. So, I mean, if our situation had not changed, if we are, going about business as we usually do, maybe Namibia would stay as it is, where it was. But South Africa has, I mean, the activity, just the level of activity and engagement in South Africa, not only within the media and civil society, but academia has been incredibly active on the South African front, engaging academia, lecturers and students and other stakeholders, and making what is happening in the media really, really part of the broader discussion in society, because we cannot, completely withdraw or pull away or, consider that media is not part of broader society. So that is a factor to consider. But I do think that there is some cause for concern on our part, especially, if you recall, last year was an election here, and there was a lot of talk about support for the media to do its job, interference in the media, political interference in operations of the media. So I think all of these factors came into play. But yeah.
Do you think that it is taking so long actually for us to also, 2022 December, if I remember correctly, late President Geingob had already signed into law the access to information bill at the time, and nearly 2 years later we still haven't gotten going with that, pending of course the other regulatory things that need to be in place, including the establishment of the Office of the Information Commissioner. Do you think that also is holding us back in terms of our rankings and stuff?
I would believe so, Trevor, because to enact this legislation requires political will. I recall, in the previous role, I was very, very engaged in these processes around access to information legislation in Zimbabwe, in Malawi, etc. I recall that the legislation was passed in Malawi. I can't recall exactly, but it was just lying there and pending for more than 5 years before its government actually started taking steps to implement it, to operationalize it. In our case, I think we could have done it faster. I know that there are lots of activities behind the scenes on the part of government who has been training information officers. I know that businesses and other government entities are well aware of the requirement in terms of having to have in place dedicated information officers. All these things come at a cost. But again, this is a critically important office that does not just serve the media. It really is, an office that is a mechanism that is going to serve all of society. And the delay in that is going to affect how we are being seen globally, because it speaks to issues of transparency and accountability. And when we as a country are talking about, our green transition and all these investments in energy, etc., the issue of transparency and accountable is front and center. And an Access to Information Act that is implemented in a manner that shows integrity independence of that office is going to change, perceptions of Namibia as a country.
Yeah. Talk to me, Zoe, about people talk about the state actors and how they engage with the media, and that can weigh on the ranking, especially if your senior government officials in their engagement with the media seem to be, intimidating and stuff like that. But I saw in the Namibian not too long ago, there was an article, I think if I remember correctly, it was Zelna Hengari who was being interviewed by the Namibian. She's of course not a state official, she's a normal citizen like you and me. And she used, I think, sorry for saying this, but she said apparently futsek, idiot or something like that. But of course, she, like I said, she's not a state official. But from time to time, you hear that kind of language coming from government officials themselves, ministers, and even suggestions to control, to tighten the control of the media and stuff like that. What is it that must we do as a country, especially at government level, to ensure that we don't keep slipping down the pecking order? I'm actually surprised that we're at number 2, because I thought I feared for the worst, but I'm glad that we are at number 2.
Well, I'm happy. As I said, I'm happy to concede the first place to South Africa in 2025. But I was really, really taken aback in 2024 when we were overtaken by Mauritania.
Yeah.
That just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Because if you looked at the Afrobarometer statistics, even Mauritanians themselves had absolutely no trust in their media, and didn't think that the media was playing any particular role or value in a democracy, as far as you could refer to a democracy in Mauritania for that matter. But to answer your question, Toivo, as media professionals, and it's a tough job, and you are going to get flack from many people that are not going to want to provide you with the information that is required, who do not understand the role of the media in society, and for that matter, let's just speak about private citizens who, for that matter, have lost absolute trust in the media, and does not want to engage, with traditional media anymore. And then, that's just one aspect. Then you have politicians or public servants who tend to forget that they have an obligation to provide information to the media, that it is part of their jobs, as part of probably their job descriptions, to ensure that the public is adequately and meaningfully informed, and that means engaging the media. I think that there's a great level of media literacy that is required, not just amongst civil servants, public officials, but also, broader society, the general public. But that said, Toivo, the one thing that I think must be considered here is that, and I think that this is a historical thing, Namibia's, the understanding amongst the general public, Namibians, about the importance of press freedom, the fact that the issue of press freedom is discussed on every possible platform when a journalist is attacked or there is a perception that the media is in distress. When something goes wrong in the media, sector. It shows to an awareness of the role of the media, probably not a particular appreciation, but certainly awareness of the role of the media. And I think that is historically entrenched in Namibians because of what the media has done to conscientize Namibians about the fact that we are the seat of the Windhoek Declaration, about the fact that Namibia is so important in the global sphere when it comes to the issue of press freedom.
Do we need to do a bit of introspection ourselves as practitioners? Have we been perfect in our conduct, or do we have loose ends that need to be tied because we also have a responsibility?
So you're absolutely right, and as a sector, we don't do that introspection. I think that there are so many factors, intergenerational gaps that affect the way that we can speak with each other. The fact that we are not open. The fact that our media sector is so fragmented. That even within our sector, there is very little trust, solidarity, and camaraderie amongst media professionals. Just last week in Swakopmund, we were doing some training on gender-based violence, and we just set some time aside to speak with journalists, and they were very, very clear about the fact that, for example, they are required to report on gender-based violence, but they too, in their own workplaces and in their own, family setup, are victims of gender-based violence. How do we, as a sector, provide a safe space for the employees, the journalists, to speak about such things? We need to interrogate, I believe, very, very seriously where we stand in terms of issues of professionalism, accountability, transparency. We need to look at, when it comes to the issues of accountability, look also at how we engage with the public and how we can, especially now in this digital age, really rebuild some of that trust so that the media becomes that bastion of democracy that everyone really needs it to be.
The late President Hage Geingob was perceived within the media circles as this tolerant man of the media. He was a friend of the media in the eyes of many. Of course, we lost him, unfortunately, and then we had President Mbumba briefly. Now we have President Tumana Ndaitwa, herself a former information minister. What are your hopes and aspirations of the media under her government?
Well, I can tell you that at this point it's a wait and see game. In terms of aspirations, the very, very first opportunity in terms of public representation was the State of the Nation address. And I recall very clearly her reference to the authorization of the Whistleblower Act that has been pending since 2017, and by extension the Witness Protection Act, but no reference to the Access to Information Act, and I found that a bit worrisome. Because again, that piece of legislation is not for the benefit of the media only. Journalists will continue to do their day-to-day reporting without an Access to Information Act. They've been doing it for hundreds of years, and they will continue to do so. But that act is more relevant in other types of journalism. But that was a concern. In terms of aspirations, it is the hope that there is support and strengthening of institutions, those institutions that are critically important to regain the public trust. Institutions like the Anti-Corruption Commission, institutions like, bolstering up the Office of the Ombudsman, again, hopefully, giving us the confidence that self-regulation is guaranteed, self-regulation of the media is guaranteed during her term, and that support for the media is guaranteed. And when I speak about support for the media, it is not just by saying, okay, we will not arrest journalists, we will not beat them up, we will provide information hopefully as and when requested. I'm talking about making a concerted effort to support the viability of the media. And government has a responsibility to do so. Government's responsibility is not just to public media by providing a budget to the NBC New Era and others. Government has a responsibility to provide a conducive environment for the operations of all media. And that means, there are very creative ways in which to do that, through tax incentives, through subsidies, on printing, because it's to the benefit of all. I think that, when heads of state meet at the African Union, or the sub-regional fora like SADC and so forth, the issue of national security or security of the nation is probably number one or number two on the agenda. I'm reminded of something that Christian Amanpoura said, that information is knowledge, power, and security, and all human beings require information to improve their knowledge, to empower them within society, and to create security, that the operators around them are working and that they are secure as citizens. And I'm hoping, and I'm appealing to the president to really act on the expectations that the rest of the world have of Namibia as a leader in press freedom.
Absolutely. Zoe, it's a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for a very insightful assessment on this situation. We will continue to, of course, hope that we go back to the top, but like you said, a lot needs to be done here locally for us to reclaim our place.
So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you. I really enjoyed it.
Wonderful, thank you. That is Zoe Titus. She's Executive Director at Namibia Media Foundation, weighing in on the fact that Namibia has slipped to position number two on the African press freedom charts. Thank you for watching.